So you may have looked at the title and thought, wow, that's, what? That's a good question. I'm currently on my reading week. I'm in an animation program, and that goes into the summer this year. And I took a villains class, which is kind of cool. I saw it on the fucking electives thing, and I was like, it's kind of sick. And in it, for one of our final assignments, we had to do a presentation on a villain, and we can choose anyone we wanted, and just kind of fucking talk about it. So we had to use a bunch of like elements about villains that we learned about. So for mine, I decided to talk about the Riddler from the Batman 2022, because I love that movie so much, and I don't really know why that decided to become my next hyperfixation, but it did. Yeah, and I made a video presentation on it, like a cool little video, and I got a fucking A+ on it, which is so sick. But when I got that grade back and I read the feedback, this, I can also put up proof, by the way, on the screen. When I got the feedback, I looked at it and I was like, maybe I'm onto something. And I decided I wanted to make like a YouTube video out of it, but I didn't want to upload the one I'd made for class. I wanted to make my own one that's a bit more relaxed. And because the one for class, I had like 7 other classes I was doing, and I had to kind of just crunch it out and hand it in. Not that I didn't put work in, but it didn't look the way I wanted it to look. And this one, it kind of feels like we're having a one-on-one conversation and you're letting me vent to you about like a hyperfixation. And that's a bit more fun than me having to have this whole polished thing. So I'll still be referencing my notes here that I based my whole video essay on, but it'll be a bit looser, So yeah, that was just background. My name's Mia, by the way. Thanks for watching. Yeah, so I guess let's talk about it. So the Riddler is a villain from the DC universe. More commonly in the Batman comics. Like, he's a pretty famous villain. He's known for like his like love for riddles and shit. Like, he'll like put riddles into his little schemes and stuff. Also, can I just say, I am doing this video essay, I guess. I don't know if it's a video essay or not. Literally under I'm not like a big Batman fan. I like have just seen Gotham, like when it came out. I watched like 4 seasons of it, and I saw this movie. That's kind of like, I also saw a bunch of the Dark Knight trilogy, but that's like my base knowledge of Batman. So don't come at me like, this is not like me like, oh, I'm a huge Batman fan and I'm like pulling up with my knowledge. Like, there's no knowledge, this is me literally just dissecting the movie, and like the Riddler in the movie. Yeah, but like, if you don't know, if you're coming in this completely blind, I'm not educating you on anything really. I'm just giving you the base knowledge, and it's that the Riddler is from DC and he likes riddles and he puts them in his schemes. And yeah, so in like the original character stuff, he's called Edward Nygma. That's like his name, like Enigma, like that's the whole thing. But I'm going to be talking about the Riddler from the Batman 2022, directed by Matt Reeves and played by Paul Dano, who I love. I love him so much. And we're going to be talking about that adaptation of the Riddler specifically, because it really, like, I really fixated on this man. So in this adaptation of the Riddler, his name is Edward Nashton. So they changed the name. I don't know why. But I did think it was interesting that they changed it. I didn't know if it was to make it a bit more like based in reality. Like the whole Enigma thing is very comic. So I didn't know if, I kind of had a feeling they would have changed it because of that, but there was really no need. But it did help to divert this Riddler from like all the Riddlers we'd seen before, which I thought was kind of cool. So now we're going to kind of get into like the video essay and what I talked about. So I'll read out my thesis and then we'll kind of just go from there. So I believe the Riddler from the Batman 2022 is a really great villain because he isn't completely evil. He's this misguided person with really good intentions, but those intentions are just executed in very evil ways. Nonetheless, he's able to make the audience care for him despite being a menacing figure, and that is through discovering that his misguidance stems from being an orphan, his mental illness, and the city's corruption. So that's basically like kind of what I'm going over here. And I'll just kind of talk about each of my points. So let's talk about his upbringing because I thought it was really interesting how they kind of tied everything together in this movie. So in this movie, Edward grew up an orphan. He didn't know his family and he never grew up with a family. Like he was kind of just on his own for most of his life, but he was housed in Gotham's orphanage, which is Wayne Manor, which I thought was really interesting. So the Waynes in this movie, like Thomas Wayne, donated the manor to the renewal fund to be the orphanage, like to be the Wayne orphanage. And the Waynes moved to Wayne Tower, which I thought was super cool because I'd never seen that in any other Batman adaptation before. I don't know if that's from the comics or something, but I thought that was pretty sick, especially because their tower is so nice. Like, hello? Dark academia, gothic architecture. Bruce is like an emo king in this movie, and his house, and he committed to the aesthetic with his house. It's so fucking cool. I love it so much. I want to live in that house. So Edward grew up in the Wayne orphanage, and let me tell you, the conditions they left these kids in. Horrible, horrible living conditions. They just so bad. It was just in desperate need of funding, and Edward literally himself describes what growing up was like in the orphanage.
Do you know what being an orphan is? It's 30 kids to a room. 12 years old and already a drophead, numbing the pain. You wake up screaming with rats, chewing your fingers. And every winter, one of the babies die because it's so cold. But oh no. Let's talk about the billionaire with the lying dead daddy, because at least the money makes it go down easy, doesn't it?
This whole scene is like really amazing, and I'll be talking about it quite a bit later. But this line showcases excellently just his experience during that time in such eerie detail. Like just talking about how growing up there was just so painful for him and all the kids, like enough that the kids there were becoming drug addicts at 12. Like the whole drophead term in this movie is like a term for drug addict because they have these drops, but they call the people who take these drugs dropheads. And it's so fucked that this is like this whole like drug thing really starts from being in the orphanage, which is just really sad. And also talks about where his current actions and motivations come from, and it was literally all from Thomas Wayne himself. The man who gave him the hellhole he grew up in and the one who took all the hope away with the renewal fund. Like everything kind of revolves around Thomas Wayne, which in extension goes to Bruce Wayne as well. And the renewal fund, if you don't remember, in this movie was created by Thomas Wayne when he was elected mayor, and it was used to help fund a bunch of underfunded groups. But after it was announced, like when Thomas Wayne was elected, literally a week later, he was murdered on the street, like the classic like Bruce Wayne parents die moment. And because of that, everyone kind of forgot about the renewal fund, conveniently, during that time because no one was monitoring the fund now that the Waynes were dead, except for Bruce, but he was like a kid at the time. But because it wasn't being monitored, like this whole like chunk of money, criminals began laundering the money like through the system. And Edward discovers this, that like the corruption in the renewal fund, because he gets a job later on in life when he's an adult as a forensic accountant, and he traces the money back, and makes that discovery, which initiates the start of his plan and dons the role of the Riddler. And I thought this was so interesting. I also am going to take this opportunity to talk about this theory I have. And I do, like, I I believe this theory is real. Like, I don't even care. I tweeted Matt Reeves even because I wanted confirmation because it has to be real. Okay. I'm so sorry if this is not entertaining. Okay. So in the movie, there is a scene. It's when Bruce comes back from being out right in the beginning where Mayor Mitchell's murdered. And he comes back home and he's in the Batcave, and Alfred comes and they start kind of having a little argument moment. And he's like, oh, there's a bunch of like people coming today. And the people he says were coming, he says like the accountants from the firm or something are coming today.
Our accounting friends at Wayne Enterprises are coming for breakfast.
Here? Why?
Because I couldn't get you to go there.
I haven't got time for this.
Later, I think the scene right after that is Alfred decoding the thing, and then Dory comes in and she's like, hey, so, you know, the accountants are here. And then it cuts.
That's interesting.
Mr. Pennyworth,
Yes, Dory.
the accountants are here.
See them in, please, Dory.
What if it's not a partial key?
What do you mean?
And it goes to the next scene. And I thought this was really interesting, especially finding out that Edward was an accountant, like later on, that was his job, like a forensic accountant. And he even mentions like, oh, when I'm in the office, I saw all these like promises of renewal.
Friday, July 16th. My life has been a cruel riddle I could not solve, suffocating my mind, no escape. But then today I saw it, a single word on this ledger sitting on the desk beside me. Renewal.
And so I was like, was Edward like one of the people who came to the house in that scene and that's why they cut? Like, is he one of the accountants that comes by to Bruce Wayne's house? And so I do believe, like, I believe in this theory very strongly that, like, that is also partially how Edward managed to trace back all the fund stuff to the renewal fund, because it started from Thomas Wayne. So I think he was working under at least like an umbrella under the Waynes, like as an accountant. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if even as a kid he knew he wanted to sabotage the Waynes somehow. So I like really believe this theory is true. I don't even care if you think I'm wrong. I don't care because I believe it so fucking hard and I know it's real. Matt Reeves, if you're watching, tell me I'm right, and also get me on set for Batman 2, because anyway, going into the second point of just mental illness, Edward throughout the film as the Riddler is shown to have an affinity for Batman, and I really love this aspect of the character, like the kind of obsessive relationship he has. But he believes, like, throughout the film, before he's even met Batman, that they're working together on the Riddler's plan to take down the corrupt. Like, he believes that they're fighting for the same thing. And this is due to Batman's, like, just previous history of, like, taking down criminals and, like, you know, fighting back. But also how the Batman in the movie is solving the riddles and, like, sort of being the brawn of the operation, while Edward is considering himself to be the brain. So it's, and just, like, you know, in the end, this isn't true because the Batman doesn't agree with the Riddler's actions. Like, he doesn't think people should die. Many scenes in the film point to the fact that Edward is in a parasocial relationship with Batman, and it's both of admiration and I think romance too. I'm sorry, like, we can't just sit here and deny. Like, we know it's real. Like, Edward, he has a crush on Batman. I don't even care. It's real. And that's, like, the only way he would react like that in Arkham. If you know, you know, okay? I think this interaction specifically from the interrogation scene of Batman talking to Edward displays really well the whole parasocial thing that they got going on.
I told you. We've been doing this together. You're part of this.
We didn't do anything together.
We did. What did we just do? I asked you to bring him in the light, and you did. We're such a good team.
We're not a team.
You gave me that.
I gave you nothing.
You showed me what was possible.
You showed me all it takes is fear and a little focused violence. You inspired me.
From this interaction, I think it's abundantly clear that Edward has this, like, really deep-rooted admiration for Batman. and that, like, his work in Gotham, like the Batman's work in Gotham, inspired him to initiate his plan, like, obviously. And this is why he chose to become masked and take down criminals and essentially become his own version of Batman, like the things, like his extension of Batman. And I believe this is a sign of mental illness and mental instability in Edward, like very much contributed by his troubled childhood. He's someone who has no one and clung to this figure, who he felt knew him, even though they had never met until literally this moment. But, like, they'd never even spoken, truly. Edward was literally just completely by himself, and, like, all his life. He had, like, no parental figures or friends, at least that we know of. I honestly doubt it. And is desperately trying to find someone to identify with. And I'm not going to count, like, all the live stream followers. Like, he does mention later that it's, like, your guys showed me we're not all completely alone. But I think nonetheless, like, the way he looked at the Batman in this movie is not the same as how he would look to his followers. Like, they were just people who would help him and people who understood, but I don't think they were his friends to him the way that he felt Batman was, which is just so fucking sad. It's so sad, and I feel so bad for him. But I think this is really proven throughout the film when he speaks about himself as a nobody, like he does a bunch of times, and I think it's just how he feels that no one cares for him, and that's enough for him to be that desperate for a connection.
Who are you?
Me. Nobody. I'm just an instrument, here to unmask the truth about this cesspool we call a city.
And the final point I'm going to be talking about to kind of round this out is the city's corruption, which is a huge contributor to, like, everything Edward did. So Gotham in this movie, both in its present and history, are really significant to Edward's motivations and his actions. Like, he grew up there, he witnessed every root of its corruption as a lower class citizen, both an orphan and an adult, and the renewal fund was meant to be a sign of hope for a hopeless city. And with this gone, Gotham had no beacon of light. Like, this whole renewal fund that was supposed to be like the spark of everything new and everything good and just fix everything that was wrong was gone, and it was just a complete lie, and Edward knew it. And he believed he had to be the beacon of light. Like, he would become the symbol. And hence his plan in undertaking the Riddler role in general. Like, he became the Riddler because they kept being failed as a group, just as a class. And he was fucking tired of it, honestly, as he should. And his anger towards Thomas Wayne and the Renewal Fund fuel his desire to pursue his plan, which was to murder those who have contributed to the corruption of the city. So this is Mayor Don Mitchell Jr., Commissioner Pete Savage, District Attorney Gil Colson, Carmine Falcone, Bruce Wayne, and Bella Real. So he only manages to kill the first four, who are all corrupt, just as he says they are. I'm just saying, Edward's not completely wrong, okay? Like, the first four people he got, they were all corrupt. Some would argue they would deserve it. You know, murder's wrong. But I think, like, this aspect of it, that Edward is correct about these four people that he kills, that they are corrupt, it creates a very interesting aspect about Edward as a character, and that while he's doing awful things, he's literally right. Like, he is ridding the city of the corrupt like he said he would, but is that a bad thing? Like, that's, like, the whole very interesting aspect of this, which I thought was, like, very compelling. But this whole aspect of the story could either be, like, either badly written or just incredibly interesting in terms of dissecting Edward and his corruption as a person. Because his disdain for the city leads to his final step of the plan, which is almost like this incredible religious metaphor where he plants 7 bombs along the Gotham seawall, paid by the Renewal Fund itself, which is why he did that. It all ties back to the Renewal Fund. And decides to flood the city on election night when Bella Real wins. And he does. This causes, like, huge panic, so many casualties, puts the city literally half underwater, but is an incredible an incredibly literal metaphor of cleansing the city, literally freeing it of sin. Literally a baptism. Like, he baptized Gotham. And this moment for Edward, I feel, is the point of no return, because his whole thing is like, he's doing it for the people, for his people. He's taking down the corrupt who keep hurting his people. But then by making this move, it's not really about that anymore. Like, he lost himself in this, and he just felt that if anyone wasn't part of his group of followers, like, ready to kill for him, ready to take the necessary action, then fuck them, I guess. Like, it's just, because a lot of innocent people definitely died. I think it's just crazy, like, that whole turnaround, because I think when I first watched the film, I've seen it 4 times. I didn't process it until I think maybe the second, like, how weird that was, like, the big shift he makes, where it's like, the whole buildup is, it's like, take down the corrupt, you know, eat the rich, like, get rid of all these people because they're doing nothing but making things difficult for everybody. He has, like, points that I agree with, like, especially in his interrogation scene. Like, I'm like, he's talking about shit, and I'm like, you're right. Like, killing people's bad. You know, expose them. And then he, like, makes this whole 360 turnaround and, like, floods the city. And I'm like, what does that solve? But I think the whole point of it is just, like, he can't come back from this now. Like, he needed help, and he needed guidance, and he just, like, these people needed help, and they resorted to making the move that no one could ignore. And it was literally flooding the city, baptizing it, cleansing it of sin. And now you have to restart with a brand new city, which would hopefully be now completely devoid of the sickness that it had. And this is just incredibly interesting because it kind of puts it puts Edward in a weird place, because I still don't think he's completely evil, like, especially with, like, his motivations and everything he explained. I don't know, after the last move he makes, I was like, oh my god, like, we were all rooting for you.